Developing in the U.S., a judge has agreed to delay former U.S. President Donald Trump's trial for hush money payments during the 2016 presidential election. The prosecution released new evidence and advised a delay would be necessary. The trial, slated for late March, will be delayed by at least 30 days. Now, the news comes as a special prosecutor in a Georgia case has resigned. On Friday, a judge ruled the chief prosecuting attorney could only stay on the case if the special prosecutor was removed. The two prosecuting attorneys had a romantic relationship. Nick Harper has more on the 2 months of court motions and hearings that led up to this point.
A criminal case where the Fulton County District Attorney's personal life is in the spotlight.
Do you swear me, Your Honor?
Fani Willis's romantic relationship with Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade has dominated much of the headlines since it was disclosed in January.
You and Mr. Wade met in October 2019 at a conference?
That is correct. And I think in one of your motions you tried to implicate I slept with him at that conference, which I find to be extremely offensive.
Willis appointed Wade to lead the case against former President Donald Trump and his allies. Trump's team argued that their relationship posed a conflict of interest and said Wade financially benefited from it by getting the highly sought-after position on the case. But the pair maintain their romantic relationship started after Wade was hired.
You've been intrusive into people's personal lives. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020.
On Friday, the judge overseeing the case, Judge Scott McAfee, published his ruling, writing he found no conflict of interest, but added a significant appearance of impropriety now infects the prosecution team. Trump's lawyers criticized the ruling, accusing Willis and Wade of testifying untruthfully, promising to continue to fight to end the case. This Georgia case is not the only Trump trial facing delays. On Thursday, prosecutors in his hush money case in New York said they support the former president's request to delay the trial, but by 30 days, not the 90 wanted by Trump's team. The judge is expected to rule soon on whether to pause jury selection, due to begin on March 25th. Meantime, a federal judge in Florida on the case over Trump's alleged mishandling of classified documents after leaving office has rejected his request to dismiss the charges against him. The former president continues to try and delay his 4 criminal trials until after November's presidential election, in the hope of dismissing the charges if he's re-elected. Nick Harper, CGTN, Washington.
For more on the upcoming election rematch between Biden and Trump and what their campaign finances look like, I'm joined now by Joseph Williams, former senior editor at U.S. World and News Report. Thank you so much for joining us.
Nice to be here.
Well, for our international audience, can you explain what happens now that both candidates have secured their nominations?
Well, once they've secured the delegates, now that each party decides when their convention is going to be, and that's when the nominating takes place. All the delegates that they collected over the course of the primaries come into focus. They all come together in one city. This year, I think the Republicans well, I know the Democrats are in Chicago. I'm not quite sure where the Republicans are. It might be New York City. But they come together at these nominee conventions. They get together, and it's an open process where they nominate each party's standard bearer. And in this case, it's going to be Joe Biden and Donald Trump in a rematch that almost nobody says they're excited about.
Well, let's take a look at their campaign finances. Where should they be at the moment? What's in their coffers? And how much more money do they need? I know that I'm getting the text messages on my phone from both sides asking for money.
Yes, and that's where the other part of the race begins in earnest after the primaries are over, is when the fundraising really ramps up and starts to take hold. Basically, each party is trying to raise as much money as they can before November and really before the fall to spend this money on ads, to spend it on campaign, door knocking, canvassing, those sorts of things. But as late, the presidential races have become almost more expensive than they've ever been in history. Last year's race between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, or the 2020 race between Biden and Trump, topped 7 figures or 8 figures between the two of them, and together it almost cost $500 million to elect a president in the United States. And the fundraising where they should be around now is probably a couple of, 200 to 300 million, or 20 to 50, 20 to 30 billion. I'm sorry, I've got my numbers all screwed up. But 20 to 50 million should be in the bank by now. That's about the halfway point of what they want to be before the summer comes. By the time the summer gets there, they'll want to increase their fundraising even more. They'll probably be looking at hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank. By the time the fall election campaign rolls around in earnest, we're talking September, October, November, they should be ready to spend upwards of 200 to 300 million in ad campaigns, travel, those sorts of things. So fundraising is really, really huge, crucial, and it's also very important to get off to a really good start here.
Well, if you can't break down Trump's financial and legal woes, and if they intermix, will he run out of money? How much does he owe? Because we know there are a few different pots here when it comes to money. Will one impact the other, and what can we expect there?
Well, certainly Trump's legal troubles have had an effect on his fundraising, both good and bad. Early on in the late winter, when he was on trial, or when his business was on trial in New York City, he would have these impromptu press conferences out on the courthouse steps and use them as fundraising appeals, not only on the spot, but also in ads on the web and in appeals directly sent to your cell phone. But his legal troubles are going to impact his financial troubles, because we know that he owes $83 million to Jean Carroll. He owes roughly $70 million to New York State. All told, he's looking at a bill in his legal issues of some $400 million. And he's signed bonds saying that he doesn't have that cash on hand in order to raise the money to cover all these debts, which he is obliged to pay. He has to raise some $400 million, and he's going to have to sell some of his properties. That's just a given, and that's going to take some time. In the meantime, donors are kind of wary because they don't want their campaign donations to be used for Trump's legal defense. And that's what a lot of people are worried about, especially given the fact that Trump has essentially taken over his party's committee, the Republican National Committee, stocked it with insiders, and is using those funds. A lot of people assume that it'll raise money there, and that may kind of end up covering some of his lawyers' bills, if not the legal bills themselves.
Yeah, because we've never really seen this type of situation before. If he does not have any money by the summer or going into the election, what kind of effective campaign can he run? Will he be able to run for president with no money?
He'll be able to run mainly because he'll probably self-fund a lot, but you'll see a lot of hamstrung campaigning. He won't necessarily be in all the places all the times like he is now, because that costs money. It costs money to fire up the Trump jet. It costs money to have that the motorcades, to rent venues and those sorts of things. And he's going to have to pay those out of pocket if his donations dry up. Right now, he's looking okay, but there are some questions being raised as to whether or not they want to fund this candidate who, A, is going to have legal troubles, B, those legal troubles may keep him off the campaign trail, and C, those legal troubles cost money, and he's going to need some cash to cover those debts, cash which we are certain that he doesn't have right now. So it's going to be a very complex picture for Donald Trump. I don't think his race for the White House is going to be a cakewalk by any means. There are a lot of hurdles standing in his way, and those could impact his ability to get his message to his voters.
And Joseph, turning to the voters quickly, what are the main issues voters care about right now? The economy has been a big issue. What are they thinking there? Because we're seeing that the general economic data has been strong, but at the same time, you go to the grocery store, you go out to eat, it costs more. So why the disconnect, and what are you hearing?
Well, you put your finger exactly on it. You go to the grocery store, you go out for a bite to eat, even you go to the doctor's office, it costs more than it did even last year. And inflation is the #1 issue on a lot of voters' minds. The Fed has struggled mightily to get the inflation rate down. It's at 2%, 3% give or take, which is pretty darn good given what's going on in the rest of the world. But the voters and the everyday people aren't really feeling it because of that real world pinch, because it costs $5 more to fill up your tank, because it costs $10 more when you get out of the grocery store. So all of that is leading to the disconnect between the academic numbers, which look really, really good. The economy, judging by all the metrics, is quite strong in the United States, but people are not feeling it because it's coming directly out of their pocketbooks. And while inflation is more or less under control, it is not back down to where it was, and the prices are not going in the other direction.